You've probably seen plenty of ads from debt settlement companies that claim, we'll cut your debt in half. But what if I actually told you that many people who actually sign up for debt settlement companies can end up with wrecked credit, surprise fees, and lawsuits? Today, I'm going to go through 3 questions that you need to ask yourself before doing debt settlement, and then I'm actually going to look at real customer reviews from 5 different debt settlement companies. I'll even show you what these people could have actually done differently to get out of debt faster and safer. Now keep in mind, I'm going to keep the company names and reviewers' names just omitted for privacy reasons. Now, before we dive in, this video is solely for informational purposes. That way you can get a better understanding of how to get out of debt, and so it should not be considered legal or financial advice. Now, if you actually want to see what your debt relief options may be, you could just take a look at our free debt options calculator. I put it in the description for you as well. Now, before I go through these questions, I want to give you a general disclaimer. We are not anti-debt settlement here at Ascend. It is a completely viable and legitimate option, but unfortunately, there are many players in the industry out there that may not use the most holistic practices and are ultimately more profit-driven rather than people-driven. So here are these 3 questions to ask yourself if you've already signed up or maybe just spoken with a debt settlement company. Now, I don't want you to be one of these horror stories, so I want you to be thinking about these questions as we go through these reviews later in the video as well, okay? First, how is the company able to lower your payments and debt amount? If you don't know the answer to this, then it's something to pause on. The company you spoke with or maybe already signed up with should have been incredibly clear on the process. If that is a question mark for you, consider looking into things more. Second question to ask yourself is, how much is the company going to charge you for their service? Now again, if you don't know the answer to this question, then you may want to look into things more. If you do know the answer to this question, then the next thing is whether to understand whether that fee is actually 25%. If it is, then that's on the higher end, and you can find less expensive options elsewhere. I can guarantee you. The third and final question is, are you seeing that you are behind on the debt or seeing that you have no choice but to fall behind soon? If the answer is no, then you might not actually need to do something as drastic as debt settlement. Okay, keep those questions in your head as we're going through this as well, but let's dive into the reviews now. First and foremost, when researching a company, you want to make sure to check out both the positive and negative reviews to kind of get a full scope of what you could be actually walking into. It's also important to note that the positive reviews for debt settlement companies can sometimes be fairly short and vague, or are maybe just from people that just signed up or are just complimenting the customer service rep that helped them. Notice that they haven't actually been enrolled in the program for very long at all, or haven't had any of their debts actually settled yet. This is unfortunately a common tactic just to be aware of. Often after someone signs up for a debt settlement program, they're encouraged to leave a review for that customer service representative, so they're feeling hopeful about the idea of finally getting out of debt when they actually haven't even experienced the reality of the program. They just were basically told something that sounds amazing, that their debt's going to be cut in half. So why wouldn't you leave a positive review? But they haven't experienced anything yet. So all that said, let's get started with the first review. In this review from October of 2024, the reviewer mentions that they paid $16,000 since May of 2023, and that only $4,300 had gone to their creditors. So that means over $11,000 was eaten up just by fees. So the reality of why that's probably happening is because technically these debt settlement companies are, sometimes entitled to taking their full fee for settling a specific account as long as a first payment has been made to the creditor. And so what can happen is if there's, let's say, $10,000 in the escrow account that, this person's depositing money into, and a debt settlement company is owed, let's say, $5,000 for making a settlement, they may just take $5,000 all at once. And so what can happen is they're paying way more in fees at the current standing compared to what they've actually paid to the creditors. And so it can feel like, oh my goodness, I'm paying so much to this debt settlement company and nothing to the debt. And that's just a reflection of the company just taking all of their fees for that specific account at once. Now, there's pros and cons to it, and I'm going to talk about an option here in a sec that can help you kind of compare from a cost effectiveness perspective. And so the reality is, if you're paying more in fees than what your creditors are getting, you're ultimately ultimately not saving much money, right? And let's just say you compare that to whether someone filed Chapter 7 bankruptcy instead. Not only would they have gotten out of debt in as little as, let's say, 6 months, but they would have had only to pay like $3,000 or so max, just depending on attorney fees, and all of their unsecured debt would be gone. In comparison to this debt settlement program, they would have saved $14,000 compared to what they paid into the debt settlement option. So let's take a look at the next review, which kind of warns us against a program that claimed to be specifically for veterans in debt. But sadly, it turns out there wasn't, and they ended up paying a 27% fee like everyone else enrolled in the program. Now, the thing is, it's honestly an unfortunate thing, but it's common marketing that I've seen trend up basically among different debt settlement companies where they claim to have a program geared towards veterans or sometimes other specific professions such as teachers or folks in the medical field, yada, yada, yada. But keep in mind that if a company is marketing a special program for one specific group, just double check, right? Most of the time, it's just some sort of standard settlement program with a different label, with not really any kind of actual benefits for that specific group that they're targeting, or in this case, really just marketing towards. Now, a better option for this person may have been exploring VA resources. I'll link a few below in the description, and I'll even link a video above that covers debt relief options for veterans. We put that together specifically to help educate people around that. All right, on to the third review. So this reviewer mentions that by working with this company, they've saved $22,250 with settlements, which sounds incredible until you keep reading. Over $22,000 is nothing to sniff at, but it's much less exciting and triumphant when that came to realize that $12,500 was lost to service fees. Since 29% service fees are based on the original debt amount, that's over half of their savings gone instantly. And they still had years of payments left. They also made a great point that there isn't any legal protection when it comes to programs like this. It's important to be so careful when picking a debt relief option because, as the reviewer mentions, programs like this can be a bit predatory on people that are maybe vulnerable and trying to figure out something that can help them. There are other options out there, I promise you that. And so honestly, that's exactly why we decided to build our free debt options calculator. This calculator helps you see what could be your best debt relief option and lays everything out side by side. You can even see if you could qualify for a consolidation loan or if something else entirely makes sense based on your actual numbers. You don't even need to provide an email address or phone number unless you want to talk to me or someone on my team. Just check it out in the description. I linked it for you, and that way you can kind of have a clarity of kind of what options to look at and the pros and cons, the cost, all the above, just so you know holistically what things are and what things mean. And that's a strong need in the debt space. Okay, so going back to the third review, maybe you're asking yourself what could have been a better alternative, right? Now, if you're paying thousands in fees, they may have been better off with a debt management plan, which lowers your interest rates without charging 25 to 30% in fees. Or if the debt load was truly overwhelming, Chapter 7 bankruptcy could have completely wiped it out for them in 4 to 6 months. Plus, bankruptcy does have legal protection, right? There's something called automatic stay that's granted when you file. It basically protects you from collections and any kind of litigation that a creditor may want to pursue, but there's more on that in other videos as well. Okay, let's look at the fourth review. Now, this review actually mentions that after 16 months in the program, only 2 of the 6 accounts had been settled and they were paying a whopping $2,200 per month. They also note that credit was absolutely destroyed. This is because part of the debt settlement process is letting your accounts fall behind or go delinquent, but naturally, by extension, if you stop paying on your debts and fall behind, that's ultimately going to impact your credit score. The thing is, a lot of debt settlement companies kind of glance over that or don't even mention it at all, which kind of leads to people feeling misled. Now, not even to mention that when this user was sued, they weren't even offered any legal support despite that being something that the company advertised. So let me provide even more clarity. What's happening is there's a lack of communication around how the program works, right? Because at the end of the day, a debt settlement program, or just let's just say the term debt settlement in general, is the process of negotiating down past due debt, right? And so when you understand it that way, you're like, okay, well, if it's the process of negotiating down past due debt, well, I'm not behind, so I'd have to get behind. But if I fall behind, it's gonna hurt my credit score, right? Exactly, it will. And so it's important to understand, like, are you at a point where you have to fall behind? And if not, then there may be other options to look at. But if you are already behind, or you see that you have no choice but to fall behind, well, then it may be helpful, right? Because at that point, you're falling behind, it's inevitable. You're not signing up to intentionally fall behind. You're signing up to get relief on debt that is going to fall behind in the first place. So what could they have done differently, right? Now, in this case, they may have actually qualified for even a debt consolidation loan instead. A personal loan with fixed payments and lower interest might actually have resolved all 6 of the debts right away without waiting for years. And I know it's not easy to qualify for consolidation loans, especially with the industry right now and you needing a high credit score and low utilization and all the above, but this could have been a decent alternative they could have looked at. All right, time for the 5th and final review, and I would argue this is one of the biggest things to look out for if you're receiving mailers from debt settlement companies. But this reviewer mentions receiving offers in the mail that looked like government-issued relief checks. That's not just misleading, but that's what we call predatory marketing. If you ever receive a mailer, make sure to head over to Google and do a quick Google search. I'd recommend typing the company name in and reviews in the search bar. You should then come across people that have had firsthand experience with that company. It's really important to always make sure to check out both the positive and negative reviews so you can make the most informed decision. So overall, what do these stories kind of tell us, right? What do companies often do? 1, they charge huge fees. 2, they take years to resolve debts. And 3, they don't protect you from lawsuits or credit damage. 4, sometimes mislead you with predatory marketing. Now, one thing I want to reiterate again is debt settlement companies are not scams. Right? Debt settlement is a completely legitimate option when it comes to resolving your debt. However, just be very selective when picking a company to work with, as unfortunately not all of them have your best interest in mind. And more importantly, make sure that option even makes sense for you, right? Once you've determined debt settlement does make sense, then it's about finding the right company. But really, it's not always the best option. So figure out your options first. Okay, the main takeaway from this for you is do not end up in one of these reviews. Take control of your debt and make your most informed decision and choice today. So ask yourself this, what could you do instead? If you're struggling with debt, here are some main alternatives I want you to consider. There's a debt consolidation loan. If you still have good credit and steady income and have a good DTI, debt to income ratio, that can hopefully simplify everything for you. There's also a debt management program that helps you lower your interest rates, consolidates everything into one payment, and you have guidance from a nonprofit and there shouldn't be super large fees. And then the third thing you could look at is Chapter 7 bankruptcy. This is typically the fastest and cheapest option if you qualify, but there is a means test that you need to pass and essentially is telling the court that you cannot afford to pay the debt back. Chapter 13 bankruptcy is another option. This can be helpful if you maybe don't qualify for Chapter 7, or if you did a 7, you'd maybe lose assets. This can be a helpful option to kind of get things reorganized and essentially be on what I call a disposable income based plan. Now, ultimately, the key is knowing which one fits your exact situation. And that's why we built a free calculator that I mentioned earlier. If you want to see what may make most sense for you, check it out. It's in the description. It only takes a few minutes, honestly, and could offer you a huge amount of clarity and perspective regarding your situation. You'll see how much you'd pay, how long it would take, and what risks you'd really be facing. Earlier, I mentioned watching out for programs that pose themselves as federal debt relief options, so please check out this video next to learn exactly what to look out for. Take care, guys. I'll see you in the next one.